With football season upon us now, there's a lot happening in the news, so be sure to subscribe to my other channel, JG9 News, where I give you up-to-the-minute updates on everything happening in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, and I give my thoughts on everything taking place around the National Football League today. And now, on with our feature presentation. I want to give you this hypothetical scenario. This man right here is Mac Jones, and he is currently on the Jacksonville Jaguars after getting traded by the New England Patriots. I want you to imagine that Jones was talking to the press about how excited he was to be in Jacksonville and how he wanted a fresh start, because in his eyes, the Patriots didn't give him a fair chance. They didn't play him enough, and they had him buried on the depth chart for no reason. In giving that statement, imagine that Mac Jones says that if the Patriots played him more and actually used him the way that he was meant to be used, that he could have put up Justin Fields-esque numbers from 2023, when Fields threw for 5,000 yards. Obviously, a statement like that seems incredibly ridiculous for a variety of reasons. Number one, Justin Fields did not throw for 5,000 yards in 2023. He has never had a season in his career where he threw for 5,000 yards, and if you throw for 5,000 yards, you had, statistically speaking, one of the greatest seasons by any quarterback in NFL history. Making an outlandish statement like that, where you basically declare yourself to be the greatest of all time, while getting the stat you're citing painfully wrong to the point where it's completely fake, makes you look like a moron who has no idea what he's talking about. It makes it seem like you're delusional and don't live on this planet. It makes it seem like you don't know anything. And speaking of knowing things, if you want to know more about the weird and wacky history of the NFL, then this is the place for you, because we post every single day about the history of the sport that has been forgotten throughout time. So if you like that sort of stuff, and you want to learn something new every day about football, then be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and grow this community and hit 70,000 subscribers. Well, I bring that up because this man right here is tight end Jay Saldi. And after 7 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys, where he amassed 63 catches for 704 yards and 7 touchdowns, and won Super Bowl 12 as a reserve player, the undrafted free agent out of South Carolina was fed up with his situation and requested a trade. And when he got his request and got new life on an all-new team, with that team being the Chicago Bears, let's just say that he made some absolutely insane comments that left everyone scratching their heads and thinking that he was a moron who had no idea what he was talking about. Because this is the story behind Jay Saldi, and the man who might have just been, considering the circumstances, the dumbest tight end in the more than a century-long history and the storied history of the Chicago Bears franchise. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, and what exactly Jay Saldi said that left everyone incredibly confused and puzzled, we need some context to understand why Jay Saldi was fed up in the first place. Like I mentioned earlier, Saldi had played his entire career with the Cowboys, predominantly in that backup tight end role. However, after 7 seasons in Dallas, by this point in 1983, Jay Saldi had become incredibly frustrated with the Cowboys and his role in the organization for a variety of reasons. For starters, he wasn't getting a ton of playing time. In 1982, he had just 1 catch for 7 yards. That was it. There were 284 players to catch more than 1 pass during that season, or an average of more than 10 per team, and Jay Saldi was not one of them. When he got injured during training camp with a twisted ankle and knee, even though he was able to get healthy and play for the majority of the season, he had been overtaken on the depth chart and in the target column by tight ends Doug Cosby and Billy Joe Dupree. And with Cosby being one of the best tight ends in football, and with Dupree, despite being 33 years old in 1983, announcing that he was going to play 1 more year before hanging it up, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of chances for Saldi to get an expanded role, or any role for that matter, in 1983. He also wasn't making a ton of money, relatively speaking. Saldi made $75,000 in 1982, which was well below the league-wide average of over $90,000, and was well below the average salary of tight ends, which was somewhere around $85,000. even one of those factors is enough of a reason to be upset with your current situation. When you compound all those factors together, it's a really good reason to be upset and want to play elsewhere. With that, Saldi did not show up to the team's 2-day camp at the end of March, and he requested a trade. It didn't look as though he was going to play for the Cowboys in 1983. And the Cowboys actually decided to try and honor Saldi's wish. They knew that they had no use for Saldi, that he wasn't going to see the field a ton in 1983, and that he might not be too good of a player with just 9 catches for 90 yards over the last 2 seasons. The Cowboys put Saldi on the trading block, with Vice President Gil Brandt saying, "Jay has expressed a desire to play somewhere else, and if we can find someone who wants a good tight end, we'll trade him." Dallas even drafted a tight end fairly high at the 1983 NFL Draft, drafting Florida tight end Chris Faulkner in the 4th round with the idea that Saldi would not be on the team anymore. And sure enough, right after the draft, the Dallas Cowboys were able to find a trade partner, as they were able to get the Chicago Bears to bite. Chicago was led by head coach Mike Ditka, who was on the Cowboys coaching staff in the late 70s and early 80s when Saldi was there. So he was very familiar with Saldi and how he played the game, and he clearly felt that this change of scenery for Saldi would work out. It also helped that Mike Ditka was a tight end, so he knew a thing or two about that position. The Bears got a disgruntled tight end from the Cowboys, and the Cowboys got a 6th-round draft pick in 1984, which turned out to be linebacker Eugene Lockhart, who played 7 seasons with the team, was named an AP second-team All-Pro in 1989, and started 96 games. So the Cowboys made out pretty well on this one, I must say, for getting rid of their 3rd-string tight end. However, when it came to the Bears, they had a new tight end. They had this man right here. Saldi was excited to be in the Windy City, was excited to be out of Dallas, and was excited to have an opportunity to play meaningful minutes and reps. As Saldi said, "It's a dream come true. I had no doubt the trade would come. I just had doubts about the timing. Wherever they traded me to, I'll be the starting tight end. I know I'll be given a fair chance. I just want the opportunity to play." And if that was all that Saldi said about the situation, then let's be honest, this is a complete non-story, and I am in no way whatsoever making this video. Breaking news! A man is excited to be going from one team to another, is excited to have a chance at getting more playing time, and thinks that this move will be good for him. Where have I heard that one before besides, every single trade in the history of trades? However, much like the Energizer Bunny, Jay Saldi decided to keep going. After the trade had sunk in, so no longer in the heat of the moment, he continued to talk about the transaction, his lack of playing time in Dallas, and what he could bring to the table in Chicago. And let's just say that Jay Saldi was truly living in a land of delusion. Because in late July, well within training camp and getting ready for the season, Saldi said that he was still unhappy with the Cowboys and how his situation played out. As he said on his time in Dallas, they weren't going to give me the opportunity to be on the field and get the kind of statistics I needed, so I wouldn't have any bargaining power when it came time to negotiate. There were politics involved. Which, that's kind of a bizarre conspiracy theory, don't you think? Maybe, and here's a crazy thought, you were worse than the other guys ahead of you. Maybe Billy Joe Dupree and Doug Cosby were better tight ends than you. And maybe the conspiracy theory that the Cowboys were trying to intentionally put out a weaker roster and risk losing games just so that they wouldn't have to pay you more money is kind of stupid. Especially because you were a 3rd-string tight end and because they honored your trade request immediately after you made it. Maybe saying the Cowboys intentionally made my stats bad so they wouldn't have to pay me, right as the Cowboys are constantly winning and making it to 3 straight NFC championships, seems like a ridiculous theory. But, okay, if the story ended there, then I'd be left scratching my head, but I would get it. You have hard feelings about your former employer and felt for some reason that they did you dirty, even if you might not be thinking rationally about this. It's somewhat of a non-story, and more than 40 years later, I'm not making this video. Maybe I'm doing a double take at this and saying, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound that smart, but it's not a video. However, much like the Energizer Bunny, Jay Saldi decided to keep going. Because after saying all of that, this man right here, Jay Saldi, decided to say, if I have the opportunity to play, I think I can catch 60 to 65 passes like Green Bay Packers tight end Paul Kaufman did last year. You heard that right. If Jay Saldi could play, he'd have 65 catches, just like Paul Kaufman had in 1982. I mean, it's ambitious, it's bold, and it's confident, but that by itself isn't worthy of a story just on its surface. But just out of curiosity, since Saldi cited Paul Kaufman's stats of 65 catches, how many catches did Paul Kaufman actually have that year? Did he have 65? Okay, so that's wrong, but Saldi did say anywhere from 60 to 65. Did he have 60? Is it a number in between 60 and 65? Okay, so Jay Saldi cited Paul Kaufman's stats and completely got them wrong. Because as it turned out, Paul Kaufman did not have between 60 to 65 catches in 1982. But hey, maybe he was just spitballing a number and it was close enough. Like if he had 58 catches, I'm not holding that against Saldi at all. So, did Kaufman have 50 or more catches? You're kidding me. Did he have 40 or more catches? Oh my God, we're still going lower. Did he have 30 or more catches? Alright, so Saldi said that Kaufman had 60 to 65 catches, and he didn't even have half of that. We're just making up numbers, like saying Desmond Ridder had a 5,000-yard season last year. Did he have 25 or more catches? Fantastic, just fantastic. 24? Alright, I give up. 23 catches, show me 23. Finally we got there. Took 100 years, but we finally got there. And yes, that's right. Jay Saldi said that Paul Kaufman had 60 to 65 catches in 1982, when in reality, he had 23. He wasn't off by a couple, he was off by an entire stratosphere. He said that he could put up Paul Kaufman 1982 numbers when healthy, when he didn't even know what Paul Kaufman put up in 1982. How are you going to cite a stat and just completely whiff on the actual stat? It's like if I said that this past week, I lost as much weight as there are planets in the solar system, and I lost 2 pounds. It's like if I said that yesterday at the gym, I benched as much weight as there are countries in the world, and I benched 80 pounds. Like, it's very clearly wrong. It's not even close enough where you can give it a pass. It's the wrong number. It's the wrong freaking number. And do I expect Jay Saldi to know how many passes Paul Kaufman caught in 1982? Ordinarily, no. No, I would not. I don't think anyone outside of Paul Kaufman himself could remember off the cuff that he caught 23 passes that year. But since you brought it up unprompted and decided to cite that stat, it's entirely fair game. And guess what, Jay? You failed the game miserably. And in case you're wondering if Saldi misspoke about Kaufman with 65 catches in 1982, and he meant to say a different year, you'd be wrong. Because never, not one time, did Paul Kaufman have 60 or more catches in a season. It's not as though Saldi had a slip of the tongue and cited the wrong year, and meant to say 1981 or 1980. Kaufman never accomplished that total. He was a good tight end, but he never accomplished that total. Better yet, do you realize how insane 65 catches in a season is for a tight end? It's a good season for a tight end now, but back in 1983, it was absolutely legendary. At the time, only 7 tight ends in NFL history had even so much as gotten 65 or more catches in a single season. You had Kellen Winslow, who did this twice in 1980 and 1981 with San Diego, Joe Sensor in 1981 with Minnesota, Mike Ditka in 1964 with Chicago, Dan Ross in 1981 with Cincinnati, Ozzie Newsome in 1981 with Cleveland, Jerry Smith in 1967 with Washington, and Pete Retzlaff in 1965 with Philadelphia. That's the entire list. That's it. You're looking at 3 Hall of Famers and what should be 4, because Pete Retzlaff deserves to be in as one of the best and most dominant tight ends of the 1960s. And hopefully he'll get his due someday, even if he's no longer with us to see it happen. By saying that if you played, which, may I remind you, you were a freaking third-string tight end, that you would get 65 catches, you literally just said that you'd be one of the greatest tight ends of all time. You'd have one of the greatest seasons by any tight end ever. You'd be doing something predominantly done by Hall of Famers and unstoppable menaces. You had 63 catches in your entire career in Dallas over 7 seasons. That's 9 catches a season. And you legitimately said that if you got more of a chance, you'd be able to catch 65 and be the greatest of all time. And you say that by citing a completely made-up stat that does not exist and had never existed in the history of existence. I don't even know what to say to that. I genuinely don't. He just pulled numbers out of thin air. Jay Saldi brought up fake research and combined it with overconfidence that bordered on delusion. And it's going to come as absolutely no surprise to anyone when I tell you that after the trade between these two teams behind me right here, shocker, Jay Saldi did next to nothing in Chicago at tight end. He played 2 seasons with the Bears, and he finished with 21 catches for 209 yards and no touchdowns, with 12 catches in 1983 and 9 catches in 1984. He missed out on that 1985 Bears team by just 1 year. He was out of the NFL after the 1984 season, never playing another regular season game again, and again, 21 catches for 209 and no touchdowns in his 2 years with the Bears. That's a far cry from what he said he could do. It's a far cry from Paul Kaufman's alleged numbers in 1982, and it's a far cry from Paul Kaufman's actual numbers in 1982, which was already a far cry from the first far cry. So what's the moral of the story? If you're going to cite a stat with numbers, great, go for it. Do your research and pull that out. But if you're going to do it, then by God, you better make sure that the stat is, accurate. Especially when it's something as objective as how many catches a player had. If you say that a player hit for 64 home runs, and you want to strive to do that this season, and in actuality, that player hit 17, you're going to look like a moron. Especially when your logic and your stat is that if you could play more, you'd be the greatest of all time. As if most coaching staffs would leave someone on the bench who was the greatest of all time. Much like trying to injure your own guys at training camp is a bad idea, which is a thing that Jay Saldi tried to do as a last-ditch resort in 1985 on the Denver Broncos, making up numbers is generally a bad idea, especially when said numbers make you look delusional in the process. Because in 1983, the 2 things that Jay Saldi needed weren't good health and an opportunity to play more. They were a newspaper with a sports section and a number line. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.